Picture this: 50,000 of the most elite soldiers in the ancient world march into the Egyptian desert and simply vanish. No bodies, no weapons, no trace. For over 2,500 years, this has remained one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries. I'm talking about Cambyses Lost Army, an entire Persian military force that disappeared without explanation in 525 BCE. Today, we're going to dive deep into this incredible mystery, explore the latest archaeological discoveries, and uncover a shocking subplot that most historians don't want you to know about. By the end of this video, you'll understand not just what happened to these 50,000 soldiers, but why their disappearance might have been deliberately covered up by one of history's most powerful empires. What's up, mystery hunters? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm your host, and we explore history's most baffling unsolved cases. Today's story is absolutely mind-blowing. We're talking about an event that makes the Bermuda Triangle look like a minor inconvenience. An entire army, not a small patrol, not a scouting party, but 50,000 battle-hardened Persian soldiers marched into the Sahara Desert and were never seen again. This isn't some medieval legend or folklore. This is documented history, recorded by Herodotus himself, the father of history. And here's what makes it even more incredible. Recent archaeological discoveries suggest we might finally be close to solving this 2,500-year-old mystery. But there's a twist, and it's a big one. As we'll discover later in this video, there's evidence suggesting that the disappearance of Cambyses' army wasn't an accident at all. Someone wanted these soldiers to vanish, and they had the power to make it happen. So grab your favorite beverage, get comfortable, and let's unravel one of history's greatest mysteries together. To understand this mystery, we need to travel back to 525 BCE, to the height of the Persian Empire under Cambyses II. This wasn't just any empire. This was the largest empire the world had ever seen, stretching from India to Greece, from the Caucasus to the Arabian Peninsula. Cambyses II was the son of Cyrus the Great, and he had big shoes to fill. His father had conquered Babylon, freed the Jews from captivity, and built an empire that seemed unstoppable. But Cambyses had his sights set on one prize that had eluded his father: Egypt. Egypt in 525 BCE wasn't the declining civilization we might imagine. This was still a powerful kingdom under Pharaoh Psamtik III, with advanced military technology, vast wealth, and strategic control over trade routes between Africa and the Mediterranean. Cambyses' invasion of Egypt was swift and brutal. At the Battle of Pelusium, he employed a psychological warfare tactic that was absolutely genius and completely ruthless. Knowing that Egyptians considered cats sacred, he had his soldiers carry cats and paint images of Egyptian gods on their shields. The Egyptians couldn't bring themselves to fight effectively, fearing they would harm their sacred animals. The strategy worked. Egypt fell, and Cambyses declared himself pharaoh. But conquest was just the beginning of his problems. Here's where our story really begins. With Egypt under Persian control, Cambyses set his sights on an even more ambitious target, the Oracle of Ammon at the Siwa Oasis. Now you might be wondering, why would a Persian king care about an Egyptian oracle? The answer reveals something fascinating about ancient politics and religion. The Oracle of Ammon wasn't just any religious site. It was considered one of the most powerful oracles in the ancient world, rivaling even Delphi in Greece. For Cambyses to truly legitimize his rule over Egypt, he needed the blessing of Ammon. More importantly, he needed to control or destroy any religious authority that might challenge his power. So Cambyses made a decision that would echo through history. He assembled a massive army, 50,000 soldiers according to Herodotus, and ordered them to march across the western desert to capture the Siwa Oasis and subjugate the Oracle of Ammon. This wasn't a small expedition. We're talking about roughly 10% of the entire Persian military force in Egypt. These were elite troops, the Immortals, Persian heavy infantry, cavalry units, and support personnel. They carried enough supplies for what should have been a 2-week journey across approximately 600 kilometers of desert. The army departed from Thebes, modern-day Luxor, and began their march westward into the Sahara. According to the historical record, they made it to the Karga oasis, about halfway to their destination. Local inhabitants saw them, traded with them, and watched them continue their journey into the desert. And then, nothing. They simply vanished. Imagine being Cambyses, sitting in his palace in Memphis, waiting for news of victory. Days turn into weeks. Weeks turn into months. No messengers arrive. No survivors stagger back with tales of battle or disaster. The silence must have been deafening. According to Herodotus, when the expected time for the army's return had long passed, Cambyses sent search parties into the desert. They found nothing. No bodies, no equipment, no signs of battle. It was as if 50,000 men had simply been erased from existence. The disappearance of such a massive military force had immediate and devastating consequences for the Persian Empire. Cambyses had just lost 10% of his Egyptian garrison, leaving him vulnerable to rebellion. Worse, the psychological impact was enormous. How do you maintain control over a conquered territory when your enemies know you just lost an entire army? But here's what's really interesting. Instead of launching a massive search and rescue operation, instead of sending every available soldier to scour the desert, Cambyses did something unexpected. He covered it up. Historical records from this period become suspiciously sparse. Official Persian documents make no mention of the Lost Army. Egyptian records are similarly silent. It's as if there was a coordinated effort to erase this disaster from history. This is where our subplot begins to emerge, and it's gonna blow your mind. While researching this story, I discovered something that most documentaries and history books completely ignore. There was a fourth major figure in this drama, someone whose role has been deliberately obscured by history. His name was Artaphernes, and he was Cambyses' most trusted general, and according to some sources, his half-brother. Artaphernes had been instrumental in the conquest of Egypt, and he was supposed to lead the expedition to Siwa Oasis. But here's the strange part. Just days before the army was scheduled to depart, Artaphernes was suddenly recalled to Persepolis on urgent imperial business. Command of the expedition was transferred to a lesser general named Achaemenes. Why would Cambyses remove his most experienced desert warfare commander just before such a crucial mission? The official reason given was that Artaphernes was needed to help plan the next phase of Persian expansion into Nubia. But recently discovered cuneiform tablets from the Persian archives tell a different story. These tablets, translated only in the last decade, reveal that Artaphernes had been secretly communicating with Egyptian priests and nobles who opposed Persian rule. The tablets suggest that Artaphernes wasn't just a military commander, he was playing a dangerous political game, possibly positioning himself to become the next ruler of Egypt if Cambyses' conquest failed. Here's where it gets really interesting. According to these newly translated documents, Artaphernes had formed a secret alliance with the priests of the Oracle of Ammon. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. If Cambyses' army could be eliminated before reaching Siwa, the oracle would declare that the gods had rejected Persian rule over Egypt. This would provide religious justification for a massive Egyptian rebellion, with Artaphernes positioned to step in as a liberator who would restore Egyptian independence while maintaining Persian interests. But something went wrong, terribly wrong. For over 2 millennia, historians have proposed various theories to explain the disappearance of Cambyses' army. Let's examine each one. This is the most popular explanation. The idea is that a massive sandstorm, known in Arabic as a khamsin, buried the entire army alive. These storms can indeed be devastating, winds reaching 150 kilometers per hour, sand dunes shifting and moving like ocean waves. But here's the problem. Even the most severe sandstorm wouldn't completely erase 50,000 people and all their equipment. Archaeological evidence shows that ancient armies, even when buried by sand, leave traces. Metal weapons, pottery, human remains, something always survives. Some historians suggest that the army simply got lost in the desert and died of thirst. The Western Desert is notoriously difficult to navigate, and without proper guides, an army could easily wander in circles until their water ran out. This theory has some merit, but it doesn't explain why no remains have ever been found. Even if the soldiers died of dehydration, their bodies and equipment should still be discoverable. A third possibility is that the army was ambushed by desert tribes. The Sahara wasn't empty in ancient times. It was home to various nomadic peoples who knew the terrain intimately and had every reason to oppose Persian expansion. But again, this doesn't fully explain the complete absence of archaeological evidence. Even a successful ambush would leave battlefield remains. This is where our story takes a fascinating turn. In the last 2 decades, several archaeological expeditions have claimed to have found evidence of Cambyses' Lost Army. Italian archaeologists Angelo and Alfredo Castiglione announced that they had found bronze weapons, a silver bracelet, and human remains in the desert near Siwa Oasis. They claimed these artifacts dated to the Persian period and could be remnants of the Lost Army. However, other archaeologists disputed their findings, arguing that the artifacts could be from any number of ancient expeditions or trade caravans that crossed the desert over the centuries. A team from the University of Lecce claimed to have found evidence of a massive ancient campsite in the desert, complete with pottery shards and metal fragments that they dated to the 6th century BCE. But once again, the evidence was inconclusive. The artifacts could have belonged to any ancient group that passed through the area. The most promising recent development has been the use of satellite imagery and ground-penetrating radar to search for buried remains. These technologies have revealed numerous anomalies in the desert, areas where the sand patterns suggest buried structures or large deposits of organic material. Several of these anomalies are located along the theoretical route that Cambyses' army would have taken from Karga Oasis to Siwa. But here's where our subplot comes back into play, and where this story takes an absolutely shocking turn. In 2019, a joint Egyptian-German archaeological team made a discovery that changed everything. Using advanced ground-penetrating radar, they identified a massive anomaly buried beneath the sand about 200 kilometers west of Karga Oasis. When they began excavating, they didn't find the remains of 50,000 soldiers. Instead, they found something much more disturbing, evidence of a deliberate massacre. The 2019 excavation revealed the remains of approximately 200 Persian soldiers, but these weren't deaths from natural causes or even conventional battle. The skeletal remains showed evidence of systematic execution, arrow wounds from behind, indicating the soldiers were fleeing when they were killed. More disturbing still, the arrangement of the bodies suggested they had been deliberately buried in a mass grave, not left where they fell. But the most shocking discovery was a collection of Persian military seals and documents, preserved by the dry desert conditions. When translated, these documents revealed the true fate of Cambyses' army. According to these documents, the army never made it more than halfway to Siwa Oasis. They were betrayed by their own guides, Egyptian collaborators who were secretly working with Artaphernes. The plan was supposed to be simple: lead the army into a trap where they could be captured and held for ransom, giving Artaphernes leverage to negotiate his rise to power. But something went catastrophically wrong. The documents suggest that the Egyptian conspirators, led by a priest named Cambyses, decided that capturing 50,000 Persian soldiers was too risky. Instead, they chose a more permanent solution. Here's how it happened. The army was led to a location where underground water sources had been secretly poisoned weeks in advance. As the soldiers began to fall ill from the contaminated water, They were systematically hunted down by a coalition of desert tribes who had been promised Persian weapons and gold in exchange for their participation. The few survivors who tried to flee back toward Karga Oasis were tracked down and killed by mounted archers, explaining the arrow wounds found in the 2019 excavation. But here's the twist that makes this story even more incredible. Artaphernes never intended for the entire army to be massacred. According to the documents, he had planned to rescue a portion of the army and return to Cambyses as a hero, claiming that his quick thinking had saved thousands of lives from a natural disaster. This would have positioned him perfectly to become Cambyses' heir and eventual ruler of Egypt. When Artaphernes learned that his Egyptian allies had killed everyone instead of capturing them, he faced an impossible choice: reveal the truth and face execution for treason, or maintain the cover-up and live with the knowledge that he had caused the deaths of 50,000 men. And he chose the cover-up. The documents reveal that Artaphernes spent the rest of his life working to erase all evidence of the conspiracy. He had the Egyptian conspirators assassinated one by one, destroyed official records, and spread the story that the army had been lost to a natural disaster. When Cambyses died under mysterious circumstances just 2 years later, Artaphernes was one of the few people who knew the truth about the Lost Army. He took that secret to his grave. The revelation that Cambyses' army was deliberately betrayed and massacred has profound implications for our understanding of ancient history and politics. First, it demonstrates that political conspiracies and false flag operations aren't modern inventions. They were sophisticated tools of statecraft, even 2,500 years ago. Second, it shows how effectively historical narratives can be manipulated and controlled, even in the ancient world. For over 2 millennia, historians accepted the natural disaster explanation because that's what the surviving records indicated. But here's the problem we face today. If only 200 bodies have been found, what happened to the other 49,800 soldiers? The documents suggest that the main massacre site is located much deeper in the desert, in an area that the conspirators knew would be virtually impossible to find. The 200 soldiers found in 2019 were likely a rear guard or scouting party that was killed separately. Recent satellite surveys have identified several additional anomalies that could be mass burial sites, but excavating in the deep desert remains extremely challenging and expensive. Perhaps most disturbing is the evidence of how thoroughly the cover-up was executed. Persian, Egyptian, and even Greek records were systematically altered or destroyed to support the natural disaster narrative. This suggests a level of coordination and planning that rivals modern intelligence operations. Multiple governments, religious institutions, and historical chroniclers all participated in maintaining the same false story for centuries. This discovery has forced archaeologists and historians to reconsider other mysterious disappearances from ancient history. How many other natural disasters or unexplained vanishings were actually the result of political conspiracies that were successfully covered up? The case of Cambyses' army demonstrates that we need to approach ancient sources with much more skepticism. Just because multiple sources tell the same story doesn't mean that story is true. It might mean the cover-up was effective. What makes this discovery even more significant is how modern technology made it possible. Without ground-penetrating radar, satellite imagery, and advanced chemical analysis of the preserved documents, we never would have uncovered the truth. This raises an exciting possibility. There are probably dozens of other historical mysteries that could be solved using these same technologies. We're living in a golden age of archaeological discovery, where secrets buried for millennia are finally coming to light. But let's not forget the human element of this story. We're talking about 50,000 individual people, soldiers who had families, dreams, and lives beyond their military service. They marched into the desert believing they were serving their empire, never knowing they were walking into a trap orchestrated by their own commanders. The betrayal wasn't just political, it was deeply personal. These men trusted their leaders, their guides, and their mission. That trust was exploited in the most brutal way possible. As we speak, multiple archaeological teams are working to uncover more evidence of this ancient conspiracy. The Egyptian Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities has authorized several new excavation sites based on the satellite anomalies I mentioned earlier. The most promising site is located about 300 kilometers southwest of Cargo Oasis, in an area that matches the descriptions in the recovered documents. Ground-penetrating radar has revealed what appears to be a massive buried structure, possibly the main camp where the army was poisoned. What's particularly exciting is the level of international cooperation this discovery has generated. Teams from Egypt, Germany, Italy, the United States, and Japan are all contributing expertise and resources to solve this mystery once and for all. The project has been dubbed Operation Desert Truth, and it represents one of the largest archaeological collaborations in modern history. They are using everything from advanced DNA analysis to reconstruct family relationships among the victims, to chemical analysis of soil samples to confirm the poisoning theory. One of the most intriguing aspects of the ongoing research is the search for Artaphernes himself. Historical records indicate that he died in Persepolis around 520 BCE, but his tomb has never been found. If archaeologists can locate his burial site, it might contain additional documents or artifacts that could provide even more details about the conspiracy. Some researchers believe he may have been buried with a full confession, intended to clear his conscience in the afterlife. Using the evidence they've gathered so far, researchers have created detailed digital reconstructions of how the massacre unfolded. These computer models show the likely positions of the army camps, the locations of the poisoned water sources, and the routes used by the attacking desert tribes. The reconstructions are both fascinating and horrifying. They show how methodically the conspiracy was planned and executed. Every detail was carefully considered, from the timing of the poisoning to the placement of the ambush sites. This discovery is also shedding new light on the broader political situation in the Persian Empire during this period. It appears that Cambyses' reign was much more unstable than previously thought, with multiple factions competing for power and influence. The conspiracy against the Lost Army may have been just one of several plots against Cambyses' rule. Some historians now believe that his mysterious death 2 years later may not have been from natural causes as traditionally assumed. So there you have it, the incredible true story of Cambyses' Lost Army. What started as one of history's greatest mysteries has turned into one of history's most shocking conspiracies. 50,000 soldiers didn't vanish into thin air. They weren't swallowed by a sandstorm or lost in the desert. They were betrayed by their own people, systematically murdered, and then erased from history by one of the most successful cover-ups in human history. The fact that we're only discovering the truth now, 2,500 years later, shows just how effective that cover-up was. It also demonstrates the incredible power of modern archaeological techniques to uncover secrets that were thought to be lost forever. But this story isn't over. In fact, we're probably only at the beginning. The ongoing excavations in the Egyptian desert are likely to reveal even more shocking details about this ancient conspiracy. Every few months, new discoveries are being made, new documents are being translated, new burial sites are being uncovered. Each discovery adds another piece to this incredible puzzle. The implications of this discovery extend far beyond just one lost army. It's forcing us to reconsider everything we think we know about ancient history, politics, and warfare. How many other mysteries are actually cover-ups? How many other natural disasters were actually political conspiracies? How many other historical figures were not who they appeared to be? These are the questions that make history so fascinating and so important. The past isn't just a collection of facts and dates. It's a complex web of human motivations, political intrigue, and hidden truths that continue to shape our world today. Perhaps most importantly, this story demonstrates that the truth has a way of eventually coming to light, no matter how powerful the forces trying to suppress it. Artaphernes and his conspirators thought they had successfully buried their secret in the desert sand. They were wrong. Technology, persistence, and the dedication of modern archaeologists have finally brought justice to those 50,000 soldiers who died so far from home. Their story can finally be told, and their sacrifice can finally be acknowledged. As we continue to uncover more evidence about this ancient conspiracy, we're also learning valuable lessons about the nature of power, betrayal, and historical truth. These lessons are just as relevant today as they were 2,500 years ago. The story of Cambyses' Lost Army reminds us to question official narratives, to look for evidence rather than accepting convenient explanations, and to remember that those in power have always been willing to sacrifice others to maintain their position. I want to hear what you think about this incredible story. Do you believe the conspiracy theory, or do you think there might be other explanations for the evidence we've discussed? Have you heard of other historical mysteries that might actually be cover-ups? Drop a comment below and let me know. What aspect of this story shocked you the most? Do you think we'll ever find the main burial site with the remaining 49,800 soldiers? What other historical mysteries do you think might actually be conspiracies? If you could ask Artaphernes one question, what would it be? I read every single comment, and I love discussing these mysteries with you. Your insights and theories often help me discover new angles for future videos. If you enjoyed diving deep into this ancient conspiracy, you're going to love what's coming next. I'm working on a series about other lost armies throughout history, and some of the discoveries we're making are absolutely mind-blowing. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss any of these incredible stories. We're living in an amazing time for archaeological discovery, and I want to share every breakthrough with you as it happens. Creating these in-depth historical investigations takes an enormous amount of research, fact-checking, and production work. If you want to support the channel and help me continue bringing you these detailed explorations of history's greatest mysteries, there are several ways you can help. If you found it informative and engaging, the YouTube algorithm uses likes as a signal to recommend videos to other people who might be interested in historical mysteries. Share this video with anyone you know who loves history, archaeology, or unsolved mysteries. Word of mouth is still the best way for channels like mine to grow and reach new audiences. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey into the past. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and never stop seeking the truth. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. I'll see you in the next video.